Today, I want to talk about short-term rentals because it's the 1-year anniversary since this happened.
Well, Andrew, starting today, short-term rental hosts in New York, that's Airbnb or Booking.com, they're going to have to register with the city and they have to comply with a new law that states you cannot rent out your entire apartment for less than 30 days, and hosts can only offer short-term rentals if they remain with their guests in the apartment. Hosts face fines of up to $5,000 per violation. There are about 40,000 Airbnbs in New York, but rampant abuse, that's where hosts rented dozens of units as kind of shadow hotel rooms. That led to a lot of neighbor and building complaints. City council members also say Airbnbs have raised rents in New York since they've taken all that inventory off the normal rental market.
So as you can imagine, this was bad news for a lot of short-term renters and great news for the New York hotel industry, who have seen occupancy rates go up. Their revenue per room has shot up over 10%, which was the highest increase in the U.S. As you can see on the graph, Local Law 18, as it's called, has led to an increase in 30-day and longer rentals, about 5,000 to 10,000 more per month, and far fewer short-term rentals, about 15,000 to 20,000 less per month. Now, if the city's goal was to convert short-term rental listings into long-term leases, that hasn't quite happened. But the long-term rental prices have indeed shot up, with one-bedroom monthly rates going from $3,000 a month to $4,500. Now, what former City Council member Cam Callow said he was hoping to achieve when he wrote the law was to stop those people who had tens or hundreds of apartments that they were renting out. And this new law seems to have succeeded with that. He also felt bad that there were over 30,000 kids in homeless shelters while people were renting out flats and keeping them empty between renters. Just that there's no evidence that that would somehow be possible to put homeless kids into those places for a few days between renters and then just keep moving them around from place to place. So that idea, although the intentions are good, seems to have fallen short. So what's the smart path forward? I'm Doug Lansky, and this is Rethinking Tourism. So here's my take. I think the law is too black and white. It'd be like having one tax rate for rich people and one for poor people. We don't do that for a good reason. There's an awful lot of gray area in between. I agree that all the short-term rentals should be registered and legal, but I think there should be a variety of registration fees and taxes depending on what the host's intentions are. Currently, to be a host in Manhattan, you need to pay a $145 non-refundable application fee, and then a total sales and use tax of 8.9%, a hotel occupancy tax of 5.9%, and an additional unit fee that depends on the daily rate of the property, plus income tax on what you earn. That just seems silly. We need to keep this far more simple and yet also allow for various scenarios. For example, let's say you're a retired grandma with an extra room that you want to rent out and you're living in the same property. I don't think you should be paying the same registration fee or taxes as someone who has 10 properties that they're renting out commercially. I'm not saying this is how they should do it, but let me give you a rough idea of how it could be structured. So for the grandma with the extra room who can show she's a low-income earner, like living off her pension, let's say she pays a $25 application fee and then just pays income tax on whatever she brings in and isn't allowed to charge more than, say, $100 a night for that room. For someone like a family who wants to rent their place for, say, up to 2 weeks or less during the year to help cover the cost of going to Disney World or go skiing, let's say they pay a $75 application fee and then a 10% tax in addition to whatever income tax they need to pay. For someone who wants to rent their place between 2 weeks and 3 months to help cover, for example, a trip to Europe for the summer, they could pay a $150 fee and then a 15% tax in addition to the income tax. And for someone who wants to rent it between 3 and 12 months per year, let's just call that a commercial license, that could be $1,000 for the application fee and then a 20% tax. And then the city could put a limit on the number of units that they could rent. Maybe make it not more than 5 separate units per person. Again, please don't get caught up on the fees and the tax amounts I'm using as examples. It's just to show that there's room for some gray area. But here's why it's good for the city and the hotel industry. For the city, short-term rentals are especially appealing for larger families traveling with a few kids and maybe a grandparent or two who would find it prohibitively expensive to get 2 or 3 hotel rooms. And for the hotel industry, they can actually benefit by having short-term rentals on the market. Let me explain. Without the short-term rentals, the hotels will likely try to cover having enough hotel rooms for the peak tourism periods that occur just a few days or weeks per year. But then those same rooms are fixed costs that remain empty the rest of the year and cost the hotel money. Now, if the hotels tried instead to just cover the peak demand up to, say, 90%, and then let the short-term rentals cover that last 10% for a few peak days or weeks of the year, then the hotels can actually earn more money by having a higher average occupancy throughout the year. Apartment buildings can each decide on their own short-term rental policy. Some buildings may allow it, and, well, others don't. Or maybe a building may allow short-term rentals on some floors, but not on other floors. Or maybe some could create a special entryway for their short-term rental units. But by hotels and short-term rentals working together and taking advantage of the flexibility of those short-term rentals that they can open and close without much fixed costs, the entire city, short-term renters, and the hotel industry all benefit. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel to get commentary on all the latest travel news.